Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome.
Hi there.
So, you
Hey.
can make sounds. It's okay. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here tonight with the fellows from Metier Brewing Company from Washington State. We have been trying to put this together for a while and finally got you guys all nailed down. So here we are. I have had your beer. It is absolutely delicious. And I created a cocktail for the evening that I just posted in the comments. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But having you guys on tonight, I wanted to hear your story. And I've heard a little bit of it from Marie. But I wanted to just hear the story behind the brand and share that with all of our viewers and our fans. And then just talk about how COVID has affected you guys. Us being a whiskey brand, we know how this has affected our industry as a whole. And then, what the current climate, how that's affecting you guys also, which we probably share a similar story also. Mm-hmm. So why don't you guys all just introduce yourselves first?
Owners?
Go ahead, Rodney.
Rodney Hines, CEO of Metier Brewing. Hi, everyone.
Todd Herriott, co-founder of Metier Brewing.
And I'm Dreux Dillingham, general manager of Métier.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate it.
Let's first, who wants to tell me about your name, the meaning behind your name?
Todd, why don't you say the meaning behind the name?
Well, first of all, it's pronounced Métier, not Meitier, which is often this how it sounds. But it's a French word that literally defined means one's calling or your trade. And I'm an owner of a bicycle shop and training space in Capitol Hill called Métier Racing and Coffee. And we do a lot of things aside from just bicycles here. And I come from the bike racing world myself and the strength training world. So trying to find a name for a business that did many things was difficult. And we worked really hard on trying to come up with a name, and someone presented that particular one, and it resonated, and hence Métier Racing and Coffee. And that sort of leads into where I met Rodney. We met at Métier Racing and Coffee, and struck up a conversation when I found out a little bit about what was happening at the past brewery. And not to get too deep into the founding story, but that's where the name comes from. We'll get deeper into the story.
Right.
Which we could do now if you wanted. If you want to do it now.
We have time.
Now good?
We're here.
Now good. Well, Rodney, so literally what happened was Rodney and I used to train together in the morning in the weight room at 6 a.m. A couple of days a week, which I didn't tell Rodney this, but it was brutal for me. 6 a.m. top. But that's when he liked to train. So, and I like to play 80s music. So every morning, 6 a.m. playing 80s music, doing some good workouts. And then I have a sister-in-law who was working as the taproom manager at a place called B-Side Brewing. And she said that the brewery was going to possibly be going out of business. And did you know anybody that might be interested in getting involved? So personally, I wasn't looking to get into a new venture, but I'm a big fan of beer, and I love parties, and I love bringing people together and sharing experiences, etc. So I started racking my brain how I might be able to pull off, getting involved in the project, because I didn't have the bandwidth to do it myself. I was a new father, and my business on Capitol Hill was crushing me, busy-wise. So Rodney and I had talked to a lot of people about the possibility, and I started talking to Rodney about it one day. Well, we were training, and I had no idea that he had been a home brewer in the past, or really that he even liked beer that much. But on his birthday, I had given him a bottle of Pliny the Elder. I think it was your birthday, and he knew what Pliny the Elder was, which a lot of people don't know what that is. So that told me that he was probably pretty excited about beer. And then the conversation started, and it ended up he and I heading out to the brewery one day to meet the owner at the time, and the brewmaster, just drink the beers and talk shop. It really wasn't more than that, but maybe we'll see what happens. And by the time we got done drinking many beers, we went upstairs with the owner and basically said how much, and we said, how about this? And he said, okay. And then off we went. That was kind of how it happened. And
Wow.
we weren't really thinking big picture. We were just thinking, wow, wouldn't this be really fun? And from there, it started happening. I mean, it happened really quickly after that, actually. And Rodney was working full time, and was very busy. My sister-in-law stayed on as the taproom manager. She was sort of the boots on the ground. Dreux wasn't in the picture yet, and we had a different brewer at that time. So that's really how it came about. And from there, we 0 to 60 pretty quickly.
Wow.
The one story I warn everyone, and Dreux and Todd know this, as I've gotten older, I'm telling more stories. And I think most of them are still true. But one story I will throw in there is Todd mentioned the 80s music that was playing when we were working out. And this was an indication that I actually liked Todd a lot and appreciated who he was. The song came on 88 Seconds in Greensboro. And it was a song for like a decade plus I tried to download. And for some reason, the licensing or something, I could never download it. And so when I heard it that day when Todd and I were working out, I was just like, how are you able to, like, I want this song. I haven't heard it in a long time. And Todd's like, this is one of my favorite songs. And I'm like, this is one of my favorite songs. And I'm like, do you know the story behind this? And he's like, I know it's a great tune, but you weren't necessarily clear on what the story was. And so I shared from why it's really important to me. It's a story about 88 Seconds in Greensboro, North Carolina, which happens to be the place where I was born. And it was in 1979 when, this is not as uplifting, in 1979 when a massacre happened during a civil rights march. And it only took 88 seconds to kill multiple lives. So you can never tell when you listen to this song that because it's upbeat by OMD, but that it has that message in it. But that became the name of our LLC. Todd actually suggested that part of our bond is this song. And so that became the name of our LLC. And I've always loved what Todd has built in terms of Métier, his shop, and the name behind it. And you know, when I think about the poetic meaning of the name Métier, meaning one's destiny also, one's calling, like it felt like that's an appropriate name for our brewery. So we struggled it didn't make sense to call it 88 Seconds for different reasons, but it made sense to call it Metier Brewing, particularly when people pronounce it correctly.
It all goes back to the 80s, you know, all the good things.
So I'm imagining you guys like working out to Eye of the Tiger with headbands on.
Oh, we did that too. We had dress up. We had dress up day.
I did not participate.
Yeah. Okay. So so you guys have the brewery, and then what happens? How was it received by your community, and what kind of struggles did you guys have, or quick successes? Because it seems like it's just you either just have quick successes or quick struggles right away.
I feel like I'm in the Brady Bunch, but probably no one watching this is old enough to know the Brady Bunch. But up here, Dreux, if he's a square above me, when Todd and I were doing it, as he mentioned, he had his business, which was pretty robust business here in Seattle. I was full-time in a corporate job, and I was just afraid that we didn't have, between the two of us in the team that was there, we didn't have the muscle to actually run this business. And so Buddy asked me, I asked a buddy of mine and said, do you know anyone who might be a great general manager who could really help us with strategy and development and really build this thing up? And my buddy mentioned, he said Dreux, and I had met Dreux once before, maybe twice. And I was already drawn to Dreux's energy because of the issues that he's already faced in life and how he stood up and was so critical in his family and elsewhere in terms of compassion and passion. And I was just sort of drawn to that energy. So we asked Dreux if he would come in as our general manager. And I fear that if we had not had Dreux when we did, I'm not certain how we would have done this business between the time that Todd had with his young baby at the time and myself. So the story, well, it took off when we had Dreux come on board.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Rodney. It was a time of transition for you too, Todd. It was a time of transition for me too. My background, I moved out to the Northwest from Kansas 15 years ago and got an associate's in winemaking in Walla Walla and was making wine for 13 years and in Eastern Washington. And at the time I had just left a job in Woodinville, right around the corner from the brewery. I was doing production winemaking at a big facility and decided to strike out on my own and start my own consulting company. And my wife and I had just moved to Tacoma, Washington. And as Rodney said, a mutual friend linked us. We'd already had met before and had a really great energy. And for me, the shift coming out of winemaking, I was feeling a little fatigued with, I love making wine, but selling something at that price point, $30 to $100 bottles, was really wearing on me. And I wanted to do something more. I didn't know what that was. I couldn't articulate it. And so as Rodney came to me with the brewery, it was like, man, we have a chance to start the first and only Black-owned brewery in the state. I to that date had been one of the only black winemakers, the only black winemaker in the state. And it was like, man, this guy just came out of the heavens to ask me to do this really cool project. And also for somebody with a French name, Dreux L'Amour is my middle name. And to have a chance to segue from the wine world to a French named brewery was like, man, you're just setting me up. This is a gift. So of course I'll do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome how, not to be too punny, how fate brings you together, especially if there's a lot of us brand ambassadors for Uncle Nearest that when we tell our stories, how we found Uncle Nearest or how we got hired, it's very much, we were at a crucial time, in our career, in our life where we were looking for something more meaningful. And boom, whatever time that was for us, we found this brand. Mm-hmm. So, and I can remember for myself, right before I found Uncle Nearest, I was trying. I had just moved out here as well to Washington and had left New England and my career, I thought, behind. And I applied for a position at a winery. I won't say the name of it here. And they, had me go through 3 interviews and then decided not to hire me. And I was like, what? How dare you? There's nobody in Spokane with my expertise. I was so upset. And I just stopped and I'm like, I'm trying too hard. I'm getting in the way.
Yeah.
I'm getting in the way of something. And then I literally just went, I'm just going to let it happen. Whatever happens, happens. And boom, I think it was about a month later that I found Uncle Nearest and sent a Facebook message to Fawn and something ridiculous like, you have to hire me. I need to work. You have to hire me. She actually responded, which was crazy.
It's funny because so Todd mentioned that he didn't know that I've been brewing beer, home brewer for decades, and didn't know that for ages, I've been thinking like someday I want to have a brewery and I want to have a space with live music, some jazz, but I want to have a space where anyone and everyone feels welcomed. And so that's been with me and part of my work. So I just left, but I was at Starbucks for nearly 2 decades. And part of my work with Starbucks was, running their philanthropies, but then also leading an effort around economic development with new stores, supporting local communities, particularly communities of color. And part of that work was really helping me understand what does it mean to build up a business, but do it in a way that has social impact as well as business value and impact from the beginning. And it's funny. I think the most striking story for me when I started to tell people that we were doing this was I told my oldest brother, who's in Philadelphia, I called him up, but I waited I think I waited till the spring. So it was like 6 months or so after we launched, after we had signed the documents, we were about to open our opening. And I told my brother, and my brother got quiet when I told him I now have a brewery. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, dude, you have been talking about owning your own place for such a long time. And every time we travel, he's like, you always drag us to breweries to drink beer. It's like, it's about damn time you've done this. And I just didn't realize that had been with me for so long. And I got gratitude for Todd for thinking of me for this. But I think going back to what you said a second ago, Sailor, I think it came in a moment where I just said, if not now, when? And that was it. Like I was already like 50 something years old. I usually have an alliteration whenever I get my age of 50 something. You can imagine I can't say it on the air. But I was already at that point. I'm like, really, truly, don't think about it. Like just do this. So, yeah.
Yeah, taking the leap can be difficult. I was in my late 40s, and I thought, I just picked up and moved across the country and did that to be closer to my parents, and left a wonderful career behind, and didn't realize I wasn't going to be able to find it out here, well, locally, that is. And same thing, I thought, geez, I'm getting to that point where, it's now or never, all in or forget it. You go for your passions. You have to, at some point. You have to just take that leap and that risk. It doesn't always work out, but if you stick with it, I believe it will. I really do. The first project doesn't work out, or the first whatever iteration of it, but eventually I really, really believe, talking to people like you guys right now, since COVID, we've had these broadcasts, and we've had so many other whiskey brands on from all over the world, and just, everyone pretty much who started these brands, save the people who had, who inherited them or something, had to make that leap. They had to take that risk and that chance and go, well, I'm just going to do it. And, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah. Well, that's the scary part. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's the best part of betting on yourself. I mean, which is it's a tough thing to learn. And I felt like that was something, even though, coming from wine to beer, as a winemaker, what do you have? You have some land, some grapes, and some barrels, and you're supposed to make this into something so romantic that people are going to pay an arm and a leg for it. But really what you're doing is you're making something great, but you're also betting on yourself and trusting yourself and saying, this is my belief, and I'm going to stand here until people believe in me or it too. And when I came on board with the brewery, I think that the guys will say that was one of our first lessons together as a team is we're going to stand here, we're going to create this place, and it may take a while for people to find us, but if we keep standing here, they're going to find us. I don't know when that is, but they will. And I got to admit, there was a time where I was like, "Oh my gosh, what did I do? Where did I lead these guys?"
Oh yeah.
And then we came downhill from the mountain, and it's all been gravy. But I'll admit, there was a moment where I was like talking to my wife, like, "What did I do, babe? I don't know."
Yeah. If you build it, they will come, and then someone chokes on a. What did she choke on? I can't remember. I just remember, I remember saying that to someone that was starting a business. Like, there's going to be a time where you got to just go, if we build it, they will come. Then someone's going to choke on a chicken wing, and it's going to be okay. And then the people will come, and they were like, what? Like, you have to see the movie.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about beer. And you guys are considered, if I'm correct from everything that I read, you're the only Black-owned brewery in the state of Washington?
Currently.
That is correct, yep. Currently, yep. And one of only a handful in the entire country.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I understood as well. So that is, that's a thread through all spirits, wine, beer, whiskey. Same thing, which is one of the reasons why our founders are trying so hard to make a change and actively create diversity in the spirits industry. So how is that any different, or does it change things? Have you noticed that it was maybe easier or more difficult? Because you find that sometimes sometimes it matters and sometimes it just doesn't.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll say I'll just may chime in first on this. I will say that for our first year, that wasn't something we really hung our hat on. You know, we really leaned into and focused on making the best damn beer in the city, and trying to find a place to stand that was different in how we built our beers and how they showed up, rather than trying to lean into our blackness, if you will. And you know, we would, when we found people who were allies, of course we would share that fact, and you know, eyes would go wide, and it would just deepen the relationship, and it was a really beautiful thing. And a lot of those business owners and supporters are still with us, and followers of the brewery. But we were careful early on about not just trumpeting that. We wanted to be just, you know, we wanted to be bigger, find a way to stand above the crowd that wasn't that. And then as we did that, and other people wanted to champion and trumpet what we were doing, and certainly as things came to a tipping point earlier this year, it became a wonderful thing to celebrate. And not that we didn't celebrate it before, but it was just different to hold that up, secondary to our excellent beers and where we see ourselves in the Washington state brew scene, which I think is near the top. But we couldn't do both. We couldn't do one without the other, and we couldn't get ahead of ourselves and just say, we're Black, celebrate us and lift us up. You know, it was like, we got to be doing something. And so once we found those things and leaned into them, I think it just deepened people's support and relationship with us. And then we could be who we needed to be, who we always were, but more upfront.
Do you find that people understand the lack of diversity? Do most people not understand that, wow, we're the only Black-owned brewery in the state of Washington? Do they go like, whoa, I didn't know that? Do you find that they even think about that?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not on their radar. No, it's not on their radar. Which is a moment, you know, we don't have a responsibility to teach everyone all of the time, but it is a moment of awareness, let's say, and a chance to, because again, when that moment happens, for me, most of the time they've already had our beer and they're liking that, and they're doing their own inner calculations of where we rank. Then you tell them that, and it goes over the top. And so I think, you know, you don't fault people for not being aware of that. We take them where they stand, but you do wish you'd like to see some more thoughtfulness. And if people are, you know, not using plastic bags and all of these other things, why can't you be aware that there's not a Black-owned anything in a lot of industries? Like, it's not a big leap, but for some people it is. But we're here for it, you know. I mean, we're not going to leave you on the cold without a beer and any knowledge. But
it's very similar for us. We, you know, when Fawn set out to create this brand, we're just whiskey. That's it. That's the first thing. We are amazing whiskey. We're now the most awarded American whiskey. You know, Fawn Weaver was Black before everything happened the past few months, and she still is. You know, if that's a fact you didn't know before, that's okay. You know, you still enjoy our whiskey, and our whiskey is sold to everyone and for everyone, literally. And she works really hard to make our company look like America and be as diverse as America. But that is a fact. And sometimes it's a part of the discussion, and sometimes it's not. And it's, you know, it's wonderful when it's not. It means we're being judged solely on our product, which is wonderful too. But you know, for me, it's been an interesting journey to learn how to, and I would imagine, Todd, you've gone through some of this too, to learn how to have these conversations, to learn how to how to hold myself and hold certain spaces in different places.
Yeah, it was so I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
It was a welcomed opportunity for me to understand more about the world around me. You know, I've been on the planet for 51 years, and a lot of the conversations that are happening for me personally in my life around the movements that are happening are new, which is kind of, in some ways, kind of sad, right? It's like, I've been around a long time. You know, I'm from Nebraska. I lived all over the country. I've lived a couple different lives, And this talk of diversity and being inclusive, which to me is like, oh yeah, of course, but I wasn't really practicing that, so to speak. You know, when I met Rodney, and when Rodney and I started the brewery together, that wasn't something that was on my mind. It was just two people doing something that they were excited about. But in the short time, you know, I haven't known Rodney that long. But in the short time that I've known him, I've definitely thought about things a little bit differently. And you know, the message of the brewery, inclusive, is for me one of the big things. The beer has always is good and getting better, and that speaks for itself. But this is a really pivotal and interesting time for all of us, I think. I mean, I'm a white person, obviously, and I haven't lived the life that Rodney or Dreux or any black person has lived. I've had friends who are black, close friends, but you know, when I think about that, I've never had hard conversations about their lives and what diversity means to them. So it's been a really crazy time, I think, for everybody. For me personally, who's in business with a black person, and now I'm thinking about it on a much higher level. And you know, I'm strapped in my daily life with my young family, and I already have a big business. But I'm stepping outside of my box and being more aware. You know, it's pretty heavy. You know, talking about it, it's like, you know, my breath gets a little bit worked up because it is so important, and I feel like I haven't really faced the music per se, and now I have an opportunity to be involved in something that can make, you know, a bigger difference. And if beer is the gateway, great, so be it.
That's awesome.
That was kind of a long-winded way to say that I'm really I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to be involved with this brewery, especially now.
Explained it wonderfully from your perspective. Absolutely. It's, you know, I had to have a lot of conversations with my fellow brand ambassadors that are black. At times I would question, am I the right person to tell this story? And we would discuss why we're both the right people to tell the story. And for me, what's exciting is knowing that there are young black women out there that are going to look at Fawn and go, I can do this too. I can get into this industry too, when they never saw themselves before. And so I imagine it's the same thing for you guys. You know, a young black man can go, oh, look, I can own a brewery too. I can be a brewer as well. That's wonderful. It's so important. And it's really exciting to be a part of something like that.
Well, it's funny, Sailor, as we were prepping for the call, just the four of us, you heard Dreux make a comment about like all these young guys who I find who are interested in working at the brewery. And I actually think it is because, and they're African American, or some of them, most of them are folks of color, but most are African American. And, you know, they're all have been brewing at home, or they're actually part of other breweries. And I think them seeing me and meeting me, they're like, well, this is possible. And they find themselves wanting to be a part of what we're doing. So I think we're getting that in terms of people who want to work there. But I also think, and that might be where other people are struggling to get folks of color coming to work with them. But I think it's a part of seeing yourself in a space and seeing that I could be a part of something and be a leader in something that is inclusive. I also think I think customers, you know, it's fascinating. I think folks of color are coming to us, and I love when I'm there and new folks of color, black folks have walked in, and I ask them, how did they find us? And they're like, we read about you, we heard about you. And then I would say 80-90% of the time, the next thing they say is, we want to show you some love. And that's powerful and beautiful. And then I also think that white folks, there's a whole lot of white folks who are yearning for places that are diverse, that are not monolithic. And I think we're also seeing that, who chooses to be with us. But then going back to something you said earlier, what Dreux and Todd were saying, it all starts with the beer. I think when Todd and I first walked into the door and we tasted the beer before we bought this brewery, he and I both had the reactions like, this is damn good beer. This is good. And so that was kind of it. It's like, all right, I'm in. And, you know, for us, for me, it's really important that everything comes back to our mission statement. Our first brewer who came with the brewery, he was a little cantankerous, and all he said was, leave me alone and let me brew damn good beer. And our response to him is, that's your job. That's all you got to do is brew damn good beer. And that became the first part of our mission statement, to brew damn good beer and build stronger community to inspire bigger dreams for all. And that's important to us because, coming into this, well, first, we're doing the damn good beer piece. I mean, Dreux has worked with the team to develop some recipes. We've already gotten awards. Our coconut porter won a silver medal. The Belgian Golden won bronze, as well as our American wheat. That's the coconut porter, the black stripe.
Black stripe coconut porter.
So good. So good.
So we got that part, and then also coming into this industry, we quickly learned, I think currently now we're one of less than 70 Black-owned breweries in the country. And I think there are only 22, last count, women-owned breweries in the country. And the industry can't continue to look this way. And so part of us acting on our mission is, how do you build a stronger community for everyone and encourage and inspire bigger dreams for all? And so Dreux is leading our effort around a fellowship program for women and people of color to come into the industry. And then when you walk into our space, you see the mission statement, but then you also see photographs of the Métier project. So kids here in King County that are a part of a program to get lower income kids and kids of color into biking. And it's celebrating the legacy of Métier, who people know that this was an African-American world record breaking cyclist in the 1890s and 1900s, shortly out of slavery. Wow. Not that he was, but the country was shortly out of slavery. But we celebrate that in our space, and we celebrate that through the programming that we do in the community. And that's just one of a few things that we actually support. But all that, again, is tied back to who we stand for, what's our integrity behind our mission statement.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That's really incredible. And it's really up to us to help, us in the industry, to help bring diversity into our industry. And it's one of the things that we feel very strongly about. And I do myself, and Fawn has said in many interviews, it's a challenge for her to find, when we have open positions, we'll keep them open for so long so that we can get a good pool of diversity, to hire from. And it is very hard in whiskey because it hasn't been open for so long. So when you're looking for people with experience and time in the industry, that can be really hard.
I think you hit that nail on the head, Sailor. I think one of the things that surprises people is, and to touch, I think Todd was saying this to a degree a few minutes ago, is how intentional you have to be. You have to be intentional every day, every week, and every hour. And it can be exhausting, but guess what? Folks of color are doing that too. And we would love a shout out every now and then, or a hand to lift us up. And I think that that's something that surprises people when they learn, or as they get to be a part and follow us, is even as they support us, how intentional you have to be to lift that up every single time. And certainly we see that commitment and allyship from our business partners and our supporters. And we don't always make that ask, but people show up for us. And it's been really powerful as we've gone into year 2, almost and a half now, where people want to lift, they want to show up and do that lifting for us and with us. And that's really powerful on your worst day, or you're on a tough day. That's really powerful.
So before we talk a little bit about how COVID has affected you guys, and I'm going to just talk a bit about the cocktail for a minute. We have some people asking if they can get your beer out of Washington State.
One day, we'd love to have that happen. Yeah, well, if you're in the tri-state area, we'll get it to you somehow.
Well, Julie's in Florida, so if anybody wants to take a trip to Florida and get Julie some beer, she's happy to.
Julie, one day, Julie. Yeah.
So the first time that I tried your beer was, I believe it was at the Jerk Shack in Seattle. It may have been at Marjorie, and it was the coconut porter, which was unbelievable. And then I had the American wheat somewhere else when I was in Seattle. And because Marie had told me about you guys, and I'm like, okay, that's the beer that I go for every time I go out. It's part of, what I do in my allyship. So I put together this cocktail, which I happen to love beer cocktails. I actually worked in a few breweries in my time. I started off in wine, just like you, Dreux, and then just fell in love with whiskey. But beer cocktails are so fun, and they were really popular pre-Prohibition, actually. And when I say beer cocktails, people are like, what? I'm like, no, it used to be like a legitimate all the time thing. So I used the American wheat, and I used 1856. And I used some Averna. I added the Amaro just to get that nice herbal flavor to it, and did a little bit of a honey syrup and just a tiny bit of orange juice, and garnished it with some bourbon cherries. And it is
beautiful. Wow. That looks good. That looks really good.
It is delicious. So anytime you guys want to do some beer cocktails together, I'm down for it.
I love that. And one of the things other things I love about that, Sailor, is for our beers, we really work to, one of the things coming from wine to beer, I felt I saw right away was there's beauty in simplicity, but I felt like there was a little bit of too simplistic with beer, where it's like, is it good? Is it cold? Do I like it? Yes. Boom. That's a success story. And I was like, well, but it can be a little bit more than that. I think we can have some recognizable aromatics in the front, and there can be some mid palate, and there can be a finish to beer. Like, we're not just chug and glug. And so I work with our excellent brewer, Michael Daly, to come up with some of these. And as we dialogue, it's like, we're not just talking about what to make, we're talking about how it can show up and how it is layered. And we have a really great summer rye that's available in the tap room right now that has these really wonderful, bright citrus aromatics. And it is a little bit hazy, which we don't always do, but it lends a wonderful mid-palate kind of creaminess, and it has a great finish. And, we were lucky enough to do a dinner with a beer pairing dinner last spring with a Black-owned restaurant here in Seattle. And I just really believe that beer can be more than just, it's cold and I like it. And we really try to hang our hat on expanding that for people, whether it's the cacao nibs and the, local coffee in our pale stout, or, how we're sourcing the grains for our wheat, and some of our other beers that just like, how does this show up? And it's got to be this whole thing. It can't be, we're not going to dumb it down for people. And if they want it to just be simple, that's cool. We'll let you live there. But if you want it to be more, then come along with us, and we're going to do some really neat things. And I think you want to be there for it. So
I love that so much. For me, starting out in wine and being behind the bar my whole life, and then getting into beer, I noticed this all of a sudden. It was like, everything's an IPA. And I'm just like, because I was exhausted by it. Like, everything cannot taste the same, you guys. We need interest and variety, and there's so much more to beer than just making it so hoppy that that's all you're tasting. I mean, like, it's not in my wheelhouse and my palate anyway, but it's like an air freshener. Love all you brewers so much, but there has to be something for everyone, and there can be so much more. You can get vegetable notes, you can get herbal notes, you can get the citrus, you can get the dessert and the sweetness, and you can have that sour, and you can have that hoppiness too. But a lot of also these like super sour beers where I'm literally watching people and they're like, I love this, but they're like, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I was never into the Sour Patch Kids thing, but I think that's the other thing that I loved when I looked at your lineup was, and what I appreciate in other, and it seems just the craft breweries, just interesting, flavorful, things that are hitting. I can always tell usually where people come from when I see their list of beers. If you've got something that's, oh, I know that's all a back palate flavor there, oh, that's a mid palate, or that's a really great food beer. You can tell that some of these would go really well with food rather than just, I'm going to crack open the can and have a beer on the couch. So that was really awesome too.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to make everybody work for beer on their couch. That's not what we're trying to do. But if you want it to be more, we're doing it,
I love that. So, so here we are in the middle of a pandemic that's lasted much longer than I think we all wanted it to, and thought it might. And, you know, we really didn't get an opportunity to prepare to see it coming. Certainly the Seattle area was the first, and I was there and I was watching the streets empty out in February. I was hearing the bars and restaurants going, something's weird, something's happening. And then, you know, my company said, you're all grounded, you're not allowed to fly anywhere, go anywhere. And we were all just like, whoa. But not enough time if you're a business owner to really prepare for what was coming. And, you know, when it's just, from my perspective, because I interact with so many different bars and restaurants, being a brand ambassador, I'm just watching this crazy roller coaster with everybody. So how has that affected you? Because you do have a place where you can come and enjoy an experience, and then you also have beer that you can send out. So has one thing helped you more than the other? What's this like for you guys?
So I'll start us off. It was a shock. I mean, like February. Well, leading up to February, we had actually, that's like almost like a year and a half, right at the year and a half point for us. July was our 2-year anniversary. So leading up to February, we began to see the turning point with profitability and sustainability of the business. In February, we had a blowout party, a couple of hundred people to celebrate Trailblazer, and it was the launch of these cans, our Pale Ale, in honor of Major Taylor. And it was an incredible party. Yeah,
it was amazing.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
So we had this high, and it was like families. It was like you probably would not have thought you were. I know you probably would not have thought you were in Seattle anymore. You felt like you were in Brooklyn, but it was beautiful. And we raised money for a good cause, and people were just like loving and dancing and everything. And so we had that big high. And then COVID hits, and we, at that point, one of the perfect things was that Dreux was working on canning for us, and we had just sealed a deal with one of the local groceries, PCC, here in the Seattle area, and they had just committed to carry our cans and our bottles in their stores. Thank God they did, because that was did we just lose Todd?
Might have. That's okay. He's got 2 kids. Who knows?
He's got 2 kids. Yeah. So thank God we had that going into grocery with our cans and bottles, because that provided a cushion that helped us through the initial months of COVID. And I think, like all businesses, we really tried to figure out how can we pivot, like what can we do? And we had some long, hard conversations about online ordering, pickup, delivery, and I will say the team quickly made that happen. I think within a couple of weeks, I felt like it was like a week and a half, we had a system in place for online ordering, pickup, and delivery, and it was going well. Actually, we were doing all right. But then I will say, I mean, Dreux was cautious and concerned in voicing that, and then I just had a moment of like, are we putting ourselves, our employees, our team at risk with this when so much is unknown, and our customers? So we decided to pause the business. And so that was a hard decision, but it felt like the right decision. And we paused for a few weeks. I do appreciate our customers, because our customers were reaching out and checking in on us. And shortly after that, we gave it a few weeks, and then we said, all right, let's try this again. It feels like we can do this safely. We had learned from what others were doing too. And so we started, but all along we did have the cushion of a little bit of distribution through grocery. And then we started back up again with online ordering, pickup, and delivery, because that's all you could do. We couldn't open our doors and have people drink beer on the premises. And I think the community showed us some love. I mean, I think it was the moment where there was a spotlight on Black-owned businesses, and so all communities were coming together in support of that, and in light of what was happening with George Floyd and others. So that that interest and support for us did help us. And shortly after that, I can't remember, Drew, when we launched our Kickstarter, but we launched the Kickstarter campaign. And, I mean, I think our broad community that was at least across the US, possibly a little bit international, but we had a goal of 20,000 and we actually raised 48,000 through our Kickstarter. And so that helped. There's a local program here, the Plate Fund, that provided small, modest grants to employees at restaurants and businesses. And so some of our employees benefited from that small grant from the Schultz Family Foundation. And then we opened back up once the governor said we could have seating. But what's hard is that no matter who says what, there's still a lot of unknowns with COVID. And the governor, I think, is here in Washington is being responsive and careful, appropriately so. And so we've had to pivot and change with where the governor says capacity and what can happen with service and with social distancing. And so we've had to listen really intently to the decisions being made at the state. And so first we did have some seating inside. Then weeks later, it was like, you can't sit inside if you're a brewery or a tavern. So we shifted everyone outside. Then we had to remap what outside seating looked like. And then we had this fun moment, this musician, hip hop musician out of Chicago, a family member for the musician is a friend of ours. And the family member said, he's coming through. He usually plays the Crocodile and some other places, which is a cool venue here. He's like, can you play here? So he played an outside concert for us right in our patio space for the 20 people who were allowed in our patio space on that day. And that was like this cool, like pop-up fun moment. And thank God it happened then, because I think within a week's time, the governor said, no concerts. So it's, COVID is, through this moment, we've had some great moments like this concert, but I also will say the greatest moments have been our customers, and their yearning for normalcy and seeing and coming in and getting a beer on the patio and not wanting to leave the patio because it was a return to normalcy in some small way for them. And hearing them tell us that's helped keep us a little sane throughout all this.
And I think Rodney, like Rodney's saying, we've been adjusting to what the governor's guidelines and everything has been, which have been the right takes. Let me just squeeze that in. They're the right takes. But we also try to do just what we think is right. And, with things changing so rapidly, it's hard. You can't adjust week to week, so we've tried to pick a place to stand that fit within those guidelines and just live there until things affect that box. But so for now, that shows up for us as a 2-hour reservation system for 20 folks, a couple turns an afternoon. I think we do 3 seatings a day. And, it's tough we run discounts on our to-go beers so people who didn't reserve can come in and grab beers to go that are only available in the tap room, which is great. We want that. But for the people who book that reservation and stay, some of them are new customers, some of them are long time, since the day we opened our doors customers. It's really, again, kind of deepened that we're not going to push the boundaries, right? You're here. Let's celebrate you being here. Let's let you be here. And then we'll turn the table later. But it's not a rush. We're not trying to, everybody's books look different, but we're not trying to turn and burn them. It's let's keep people safe. Let's have a good experience. And then we'll go from there. And I think, I hope other businesses, not everybody can grab onto that depending on your business style, but I hope that people see that model of let's give people experiences, even if it's limited, and lean into that. We'll deepen our commitment with them. And those people may buy to-go beers next week when they can't get a seat. They may tell their buddies. They may pick it up at PCC, a case of beer. Who knows? But you just got to be, I think, just being careful on our asks and of our staff and of our supporters. And some by the grace of above, we've found a decent place to stand right now in that. So
that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that you guys are making it through. And I'm so appreciative that we got to have this chance to get together again. And I really hope that, as soon as this is over, we have to do a whiskey and beer event together.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I know we talked about it, the Solo Seattle for like 2 seconds, Rodney. Before all of this.
That was a hopping event. We didn't have much time.
This is a delicious cocktail, you guys. So please support Métier. And again, thank you for your time and thank you for being here and all that you guys are doing and for making really, really yummy beer. So drink honorably.
Thanks, Taylor.
Cheers, everybody. And thanks for all the viewers for being with us tonight. So take care,
everybody.
Thank you.